Welcome back to Freddy's Flight Reviews, where today I'm reviewing China Eastern Airlines on a 12-hour flight from Shanghai to London in economy class. You'll see how flying with them through Shanghai is definitely an odd experience, but if you can ignore a few notable drawbacks, then they are ultimately one of the most cost-effective ways to travel from Europe or the US to Asia. We start off in Shanghai Pudong Airport's Terminal 1, where I had just arrived on a very early morning flight from Hanoi. The transfer process was tedious, with what felt like about 10 separate document checks and a full body frisking. But we made it through in about half an hour and headed over to the satellite terminal where our flight was departing from. And just a note on the transfer process for people who plan on doing it. At one point, they separate you into two lines for a passport check, and a guard would direct people to the correct line after looking at their passport, but we couldn't help but notice that one line was entirely white and East Asian people, whilst the other was all brown and black people. And it wasn't based on passport because I saw plenty of British passports in the other line as well. My wife is Vietnamese, and I guess she didn't pass the East Asian test either because they tried to put her in the other line. So kind of a shocking example of discrimination there, and probably one of the reasons I'll avoid transferring in Shanghai in the future. Back in the terminal though, I was shocked at how empty it felt. The airport was the 10th busiest in the world last year, serving almost 80 million people, and yet in the international area at least, it felt like a ghost town with hardly any shops or restaurants. We were here for 4 hours and it never felt busy or anywhere close to capacity in fact. Even back in September last year when I flew a domestic flight with China Eastern, link in the description, the airport also felt barely half full. So it always surprises me when I see the stats on how busy this airport is. One thing I do like about the airport though is the great plane spotting opportunities. Lots of cool special liveries and airlines most people have never heard of. Like this China United Airlines plane. Who the hell are they? And I also saw a few Comac 909s, a homegrown Chinese aircraft that you can pretty much only see in China, though I didn't see any Comac 919s sadly. Anyway, here's our aircraft for today, a 10-year-old Boeing 777-300ER, with 6 first-class seats, 52 business-class seats, and 258 economy-class seats in a 3-4-3 configuration. Boarding was on time, but before we step on board, here are the sats and route map for today's flight, where we would head north and fly straight over Beijing, then spend almost the whole flight flying over Russia before looping down over the Baltic Sea and arriving in London Gatwick, 25 minutes ahead of schedule. Also, here's the seat map from Aerolopa, and you can see I'm sitting almost right at the back in 71L. I chose these because the rows here only have 2 seats by the window, so as you'll see shortly, it's extra spacious. The only downside being you're one of the last to get off the plane after landing. Business class seems pretty nice as well. As you can see, the cabin is extremely brown and beige, so I don't think they'll win any awards for aesthetics, but with 32 inches of seat pitch in economy, the legroom is basically as good as you'll find on any airline. The seat is also pretty comfy and was very clean. And also, as someone who always sits by the window, it was really nice only having 2 seats instead of the usual 3. Also, every plane seat should have one of these cup holders. It makes it so much more convenient when they're serving drinks. And lastly, the screen has a USB port for charging, and they supposedly offer free Wi-Fi, but it didn't work at all during our flight. You get the basic thin blanket and pillow as well, so overall, pretty standard for long-haul economy. But as long as I get an adjustable headrest, I'm happy. The headrest cover also has this nice pattern on it, the same pattern you'll find on their flight attendant uniform, and apart from those 2 splashes of colour, everything else in the cabin feels extremely drab and beige. Also, the view out the window is pretty good for this seat. Now looking at the in-flight entertainment system, it's not very good overall, but I have to stress, for a Chinese airline at least, it is actually pretty decent. I feel like it's slightly better than China Southern, with a better range of Western movies, and infinitely better than the other Chinese airline I've flown, Shenzhen Airlines, who had like 3 Western movies and maybe 10 Chinese movies in total. And by the way, if you want to see my review of those 2 airlines, you can find the link in the description below. The selection of TV shows was dismal though. And they have a moving map as well, but you can't control it. Then lastly, they have a few games as well. After not long at all, it was time to push back and the safety video started playing, and I actually like it a lot. It has a clean style with good visuals, and it showcases some cool places in China. Basically everything a safety video should be. It's also played in both Chinese and English, so most people should be able to understand it.
女士们、先生们，东方派旅行会友们，早上好！我是本次航班的客舱经理，欢迎您搭乘中国东方航空班机前往伦敦盖特维克机场。从上海到伦敦的飞行时间大约需要11小时。
We got a nice wave as we left, then a 10-minute taxi to the runway. Also, if you didn't know already that Shanghai Pudong is China Eastern's main hub, then the sheer number of China Eastern planes here should make it obvious. Now get ready for the takeoff coming up next. Just a quick note, I'm getting close to 5,000 subscribers, so big thanks to everyone who's supported me so far, and if you're enjoying the video and want to see more, please consider subscribing. It will help me keep a roof over my cat's head, and maybe he'll even get to eat tuna for dinner to celebrate. After takeoff, we also got a pretty good view of Shanghai's other huge airport, Hongqiao International, which serves about 50 million passengers a year, and here's a clearer picture of what it looks like. If we ignore this weird 1 kilometer long building shaped like a 4-leaf clover, you can see the terminal is a crazy impressive mega infrastructure project combining the airport, high-speed rail, roads, metro, and even a maglev train planned in the future. All that is completely irrelevant to this video though, so back on board about 30 minutes after takeoff, the meal service began, and as a pleasant surprise, the crew started serving from the back and worked forward, so we got our food first. Positive, as most airlines would save the back rows until last, and just to note about the food, we found it to be pretty tasty actually, but they do only serve Chinese style dishes for both meal options, so if you're expecting beef and potatoes, you might be disappointed. Here I got braised pork belly with rice, a prawn and potato salad, and a small bowl of melons, with some peanuts and a Biscoff biscuit on the side. Also, inexplicably, a serving of butter, but no bread, so that left me confused for a while. But then about 15 minutes after being served, after we'd both finished eating by the way, the crew came round handing out warm brioche rolls. So overall, an above average meal if you can ignore the delayed bread. I then passed some time by watching a fantasy kung fu movie called Legends of the Condor Heroes, and they have some pretty good Chinese movies on here, but this was not one of them. The fighting was cool though. The flight also had intermittent bouts of quite strong turbulence as well. And now for the loo review, completely unremarkable apart from the retro tiled floor. And this broken door. A toothbrush kit was also available. Now at about the midpoint of the flight with about 5.5 hours before landing, they turned on the lights and started the second meal service. This continues my experience of China Eastern having unusual meal timings, as I expected the second meal to be served just before landing, as that's what every other airline I've flown from Europe to Asia does. But instead they did the second meal service just a few hours after the first, then served a small snack before landing. For some more context, the earlier short-haul flight I took with China Eastern departed at 2 AM and landed at 6 AM, and on that flight they basically only gave us 1 hour of sleep before serving breakfast 1.5 hours after takeoff, then left the lights on for the rest of the flight, so be ready for that if you're flying China Eastern I guess. The food was pretty good though, but again they only had Chinese options. This was the crab noodle for the main, which tasted good, then a kind of spam and sauerkraut thing as the side, and a sweet red bean soup thing for dessert, which was fine I guess. The spam and sauerkraut was a hard miss though. And again, they did their signature late bread service about 10 minutes after we'd actually finished eating. At this point, I was on Chinese movie number 2, The Wandering Earth, adapted from a book by Liu Cixin. which is a name I don't know how to pronounce. This was the perfect plane movie with over-the-top action and melodrama. Just before landing, a chicken sandwich was served. No vegetarian option, by the way. It had a comically low amount of filling, but the filling it did have was pretty tasty. A kind of chicken, mayo and seaweed combination. Also, I asked for tea and got oolong tea, which was nice and very Chinese. Then, after 11 hours in the air, we finally caught sight of the UK, and it was a pretty smooth descent into London Gatwick, so here's that. Skip to 11:18 in the video for my final thoughts. So, China Eastern Airlines. Definitely experience, and I'm not sure how I feel about them. The seat, service and food were all slightly above average, and the seats right at the back with only 2 seats per row were really comfortable for a 12-hour flight. And regardless how you feel about the whole Russia situation, being able to fly over does save a few hours. There are a few things holding them back though. First, similar to other Chinese airlines, their website is terrible, but at least I was able to reserve my seats for free. Also, the transfer experience at Shanghai was dubious at best, from the absurd amount of document checks to the mandatory frisking, not to mention the blatant racial profiling. Also, there's absolutely nothing to do at the airport despite how big it is, so mixed feelings to say the least. A good in-air experience, but a bad on-the-ground experience. So thanks to all that, they'll keep their 6 out of 10 ranking on my airline tier list. A solid budget choice, but just be prepared for all those negatives I mentioned. If I had to choose a Chinese airline to fly again, I would probably go with China Southern instead. Now in next week's video, I'll be flying Vietnam Airlines, a severely underrated airline in my opinion, so stay tuned for that and more. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching and goodbye.